Next week, Auckland hosts one of the largest ever conferences to consider the future of food in our region. The 2035 Oceania Summit will feature a keynote address from Karen Ross, California's Secretary of Agriculture and Food, who leads a delegation of growers and officials following up New Zealand's recent Memorandum of Understanding agreement with her state. Secretary Ross, thank you for joining us, and shall we start with the MOU first? What does it actually do?
Oh, it's a Memorandum of Understanding?
Yes.
Yes. So this was really a wonderful occasion to come together in the Botanical Garden, which is dedicated to New Zealand, in San Francisco, when the governor and the prime minister executed a Memorandum of Understanding that was really, it's several pages long, but really at the heart of it, it was about two progressive governments that are working hard to mitigate adapt to climate change and find solutions to really reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And so this is about how we want to work together, share information, bring academics together, bring industries together, and on a government to government basis, share information about policies, how we're funding different programs, and what are the other strategies that we should be pursuing to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. That's really at the heart of it, what this cooperation is all about.
So do we have a history of working together, or has there been a history of, communication over these issues at all?
There have been over the years, and especially on climate. I can't speak to, well, I've been secretary for 12 years now, and I know that New Zealand, because it is an important agricultural producer, I acknowledge that especially in several of my favorite commodities, dairy, lamb and wool, and then of course wine, because I spent quite a bit of my past in the wine sector in California, that there's always been exchanges of information. And I think the climate agenda, knowing our sensitivities to how our agricultural productivity, just the future of humanity is going to be affected. We have been aligned on a number of the strategies on climate change for at least the last decade, if not longer.
So is there a piece of work, a specific piece of work going forward that might be the first thing that kicks off this kind of joint approach to issues?
I can't speak to that specifically because this memorandum was signed, I guess it was in late May, and usually it takes a while to come together on that. And because various agencies of our government are involved, I'm very focused on the agricultural piece of this. And I am very happy to say that one of the outcomes of the conversation that I started with Ag Minister O'Connor at that signing was how soon could we get back together and start to develop some shared strategies. So he was here several weeks ago. We'd already had this trip planned. It's a small delegation that I'm taking, but it has academic representatives. It has scientists who oversees one of our advisory committees, has a representative from the wine sector, as examples of where we can see some sector to sector opportunities and really start to look at how do we create shared webinars and academic exchanges to really make sure we're equipping farmers and ranchers and producers in New Zealand and California with the latest information, and to do what farmers always enjoy best, which is learn from one another and ask those questions about, did that really work for you? How did you implement that? So that's what I'm looking forward to, is actually getting to that next stage that we know we want to do these kinds of projects together. And then we start the real planning and bring in the right academics, and then start to work together on a schedule of webinars and other exchanges, which I think are also a really wonderful way to really spur innovation. And at the end of the day, it's about spurring innovation.
So, New Zealand agriculture often prides itself on being world leading and so forth. We hear a lot of that down here. But actually, when you look at the Californian statistics, you're blown away by how diverse and how green and how progressive that sector is. Can you just tell us a little bit about the shape of the Californian sort of food producing sector?
Sure. So we are unique because we're one of the few Mediterranean climates. And with that, it has allowed us to grow and harvest almost every day of the year because of the climate that we enjoy. And then we're a very large state. So we're diverse by microclimates, we're diverse by coastline versus the interior. And so we are in a very unique position. We have extremely efficient farming systems. So we could grow up to 400 crops commercially. We are a very large dairy producer, so we have that in common with New Zealand. I won't say competitors, but we have that. And so we're about, in US dollars, it's about 50 to $51 billion a year, which makes us the #1 ag producing state in all of the United States, because so many of them are high value specialty crops. We are the home of our country's fruits and vegetables and wine. We're a very large wine producer. So that's high value ag that we produce here. And we have a very urbanized state, which drives a lot of our public policy around environmental standards, worker standards, and just care for our natural resources in general. But I think that's another priority that we share with the people of New Zealand.
Is your agricultural sector green?
Well, I refer to it as green, but others may not refer to it in the same way that I know how that terminology is used in New Zealand. And quite truthfully, I'm looking forward to really learning more about that and the approach and being able to characterize it as green. Here in California, we're really focused on transitioning our agricultural producers to being carbon neutral. Not only how do we reduce the greenhouse emissions that come from farming that might release carbon as well as methane, but then how do we become part of the solution as a carbon sink? And I feel strongly that we're going to have a lot of commonalities with New Zealand in that, and just knowing about how much of your livestock sector in particular is pasture-based, which is not a luxury that we have because we don't have the rainfall that you have in New Zealand. Right. So I'm looking forward to learning more about that.